Welcome to Game Devs Play Games, where you can watch Cuphead and Nathan kill ship.
Nathan kills ship. That's the name of the episode.
Captain Briny Beard.
Shootin' and lootin'. Shootin' and lootin'.
Is his beard briny because it gets covered in seawater?
Totally not use the weapon loadout I'm using. All right. Yeah, duh.
Isn't that what
that's
briny
right.
is?
Look at this guy. Look. You can't use the auto.
Oh, because you attack the barrel?
Yep. And it can't be damaged.
Ah, interesting. You can't write it up, can you? I assume not.
Oh.
But like, he doesn't have teeth on the top. This is kind of fun. He's choking a squid. What? So mean.
No squids are hurting the filming of this episode. Ah! Dogfish!
Whoa, that looks straight out of Tom and Jerry. That like dogfish.
Ah, it did.
Like it looked like the bulldog.
Oh, right. The
I forget his name. Wah! I would not have anticipated that.
Right? Well, you can actually see it showing up in the background. Kind of goes back to the clown.
Yeah, yeah. You know, something I didn't really think about,
Okay, good.
but I think part of what sells the art is that there's a really subtle blurring effect that goes on, which I think if the game was totally crisp, like even in the background, that actually might
Every time I got hit
have
was
hurt
by a
the
dogfish.
style. They're tricky, man.
Wait, say that again? The what?
So there's a very subtle blurring effect for things that are sort of distant in the environment. And I you know, maybe that was a more normal animation or cartoon style for old school cartoons. I mean, they tended to have one layer static backgrounds. But you see it particularly well in this level, where like the clouds and even the water, it's like slightly blurred.
Oh.
It gives a nice sense of depth, but I think it also helps it from being too sharp and kind of distracting. I don't know, I like it. I think that it reads pretty well.
I think that's... Ah, really?
Oh.
I think that's particularly important. Ah, shit. You know what?
Yeah, you kind of pinned yourself there, buddy.
Yeah, I know. I got jealous. I got jealous.
The design of this level is pretty simple compared to what we just went through with the honeycomb.
Yep. And in this, it's like, well, the honeycomb was the level was what was so interesting about it, right? It was the constant moving upward and having to dodge the attacks that were based off of that about moving upward.
Yeah, it makes me wonder how they decided how to break down what bosses were going to be in what stages, aside from just straight up difficulty. But difficulty can be modified to a certain extent. So like, if they wanted, for whatever reason, the honeycomb level to be in Island 1, I think they could have made it work just by tweaking design values. So yeah, I wonder if they were like, we need one stage that focuses more on the one particular boss at hand, and we want one stage where, you know, it's you know, a boss that has a lot of different waves.
I jumped too early.
And then maybe a boss where the level is the hard part rather than the actual boss itself.
I think that, I mean, I've actually thought about this a lot, and I think that it's probably, like, if I were to do it, I would be like, I specifically want one where you're always moving upward and you're always moving to the side. Now, the one that they don't have that I think is a missed opportunity is one where you're always moving down and having to constantly use the jump through the floor.
I would love that.
And I think that was kind of a missed opportunity.
DLC.
Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen.
I mean, you say that, but you'd be surprised how many devs actually say no DLC and they'll eventually do DLC.
That would mean that they'd have to reanimate everything. They would have to, come up with new animation. And
it was probably a tremendous amount of work. But they made a lot of money, so I mean, they can justify the production effort. And I think if they made DLC, it would. So I mean, then that's the question. Also, is if they made DLC, would it sell? I think probably.
Oh hell yeah, absolutely. I mean, without a doubt.
I mean, they went platinum, which means they sold more than 1 million copies of the game. I believe that's what it is. Which is pretty significant for an indie team. I mean, this was a two-man studio, or it is a two-man studio, not was.
Well, the art was another person altogether.
I mean, that's true. But regardless, like, it was the two people that made this project happen.
Yes.
One of which was, I think, a huge part of the art.
Oh shit!
Art direction.
Not to the cannons.
But yeah, I'd be surprised if they did all the art themselves. I bet they contracted a lot of people.
They contracted one or two people that I know of.
Even then, that's a really small team to pull off a project of this scale.
Yeah. You know what would be better? This. Yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Charge shot. Charge shot wins. Charge shot wins. When I'm close, I will use this. When I'm far, I will shoot the wrong direction.
The stage is interesting because I feel like it's a lot easier to pay attention to everything, but it still is difficult. I guess specifically because of how they kind of manipulate your space around the stage. And they do it with just the simple mechanic of that barrel that's following you around. Like, if that was not there, the stage would actually be pretty easy, I think.
Oh, absolutely. It's the fact that it's forcing you to constantly move, which is... ooh.
I mean, that seems like a pretty core design philosophy for the game, is that they don't want the player moving or staying idle for too long. But in a sense, that sort of works against the...
How? And ready?
Whoa.
That's one of those attacks that if you do not know exists, would hit you every time, or will hit you. So that's, oh, Jesus. It took long enough.
You have 5, by the way. Ooh.
Oh.
You might have been able... Oh, you would have been able to kill him.
Most likely.
Womp womp.
Charge shot wins.
Yeah, do you think that that's contradictory, that they have a mechanic where you can stand idle and shoot in one direction, but yet most of the design of the game requires you to be constantly mobile?
I think it's not about being constantly mobile. I think it's about finding the opportunity of when you need to be mobile or when you need to be standing still. And this is one of those instances. I have the opportunity to shoot him, so I'm going to. But the moment that he starts to attack back, I need to move.
Yeah, so in a weird way, it's both testing your powers of perception and the ability to, like, keep track of where the safe zones are and when the safe zones are, but also testing your response speed, because you can get into the safe zone, but if you're not able to evade as soon as things change, you're going to take damage.
Yes.
Which also is taxing on your perception because, you know, if you're focused too much on observing everything, you're probably not going to be able to respond fast enough to most things. You're doing good this time.
Shut up.
You should probably use your... Yeah. There you go. Boop, 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 boop. Now, here's a question. Do you think that the player should be able... Nice. Do you think the player should be able to move while crouched? Like, do a really slow, like, crouching move?
I don't think so. I think it's actually a nice risk-reward situation where should I crouch now and cut my hitbox in half? Or even potentially less than that? Or should I go, like, or should I have the option of moving? It's one of the, I can be safe, but I can't move and be safe at the same time.
I half agree. I think the only reason I thought of it was because that moment with the giant laser, I could see myself getting really frustrated with it because it sort of sets you up, it traps you. And if you're not far away enough from the barrel when that laser happens, then you crouch down and you just have to take damage if the barrel catches up with you. It can feel kind of cheap and not a very fair way of taking damage because you have to really plan ahead for that.
This is actually where a lot of people start getting frustrated with the game, actually.
Oh, okay.
Is because of exactly that point that you bring up. And that's my main argument, is that, okay, you have one side of people saying that, yeah, I feel trapped, like that your game, because of that, if the barrel's moving left to right and something is forcing me to duck and I cannot move, that eventually the barrel could catch up to me and I take inevitable damage.
Right.
The argument is don't take inevitable damage. There was actually 2 or so times in that last fight where I purposely ran under the barrel so that it would drop down on me because I knew that would slow it down and then I would be able to get myself in an advantageous position later.
Yeah. And this speaks to what I was saying about being perceptive about everything going on the stage at once. It also tells the player how they can manipulate things to prevent that from being the case. And maybe it's frustrating for players because that's a very tall ask.
Yeah, but as a challenging game, that's the point of it. I think a lot of somebody actually brought up a really good argument, and it was actually one of the our competitors for game design guide, but like I follow them and I watch them because they have really good advice, or they have really good points to bring up, and I don't remember which one it was, but they brought up a good point, and that was the animation and the art style of Cuphead drew in a large audience and drew in a lot of people to play a game they wouldn't normally play. People who play this type of game, these really high rage games, essentially, people who play rage games, they're used to playing things like Dark Souls and stuff like that. But there's a large majority of people out there that will not play those games because they're too hard. But this game drew them into it.
Yeah, I guess when Dark Souls probably started getting really popular, I bet it did draw in a lot of people, and then they got really pissed off, and then they left that experience feeling salty. And after that, it had a reputation, so people just didn't jump in.
And anybody who goes, oh, this is like Dark Souls, then those people don't like it. They will never play whatever game is compared to Dark Souls. Now, people haven't really been...
Even though that's also a marketing tactic. Like, this game is like Dark Souls of this genre.
And there's a lot of people that would be like, Cuphead's like Dark Souls with blah, and I'm like, it's not at all like Dark Souls.
There's nothing in common. Difficulty is not synonymous with Dark Souls.
Yeah,
Stop it.
Stop doing that. But I think that is an interesting thing to point out, is that, yeah, you're right. It is asking a lot of the player. Undoubtedly, it is. But
that's not a bad thing.
That's not a bad thing, because that's the point of the game.
Yeah. If the game's not a challenge, and if it's not testing players' capability of keeping up, there's nothing wrong with games that don't do that. But I think it justifies its own challenges that way.
Yeah. Like,
it's not unfair. It just means that you have to get good. And in a way, that's making a better player out of you in the end.
There's a huge argument of like, anything that you can see coming, if you get hit by, that is your fault, right? That is your fault as the player. It's not the game's fault. That's a point in a whole nother discussion. But if you can see it coming technically, then you should be able to avoid it. It's the attacks that you can't see coming that you get hit by. Those are the ones that are considered unfair. And for instance, that large laser is one of those. It's the very first time it shows up, you are going to get hit by it. There's nobody in the right, like, unless they were lucky and already ducking for whatever reason, because there's no point to duck up into that point in the fight. But up into that point, if you like, you're going to get hit the first time. And after that, you learn when he starts doing that to duck. Because up until that point, you're probably used to, he's probably going to shoot something at me and I can jump over it. That's what you think about. That's the first thing that goes to your head. You don't have to duck a lot in this game, so that's not first-hand nature. That's
true. No, actually, that's a pretty good point. And like, they could do things to better, I guess, give the player some anticipation of what's going to happen.
They could have made the laser a little slower, and the reason I think they should have is because the laser's pink.
Oh, they're breaking their own convention.
I've never parried that laser because I don't know how. Because I would have to already be in air and time it, but when that laser shows up, it's already on the screen. It's immediately there.
Oh, so if you jump, you probably would just have to keep parrying it to keep bouncing.
Yeah, just like we did with the queen bee thing. You would have to time it just right. But yeah, you could probably parry that thing, no joke, like 10 times.
I mean, at least...
And like going through the laser, you would parry it like 10 times until you came above it, and then you could bounce off it a couple times before it disappeared.
I mean, at least on that end, you have your options, right? And that sort of negates what I was saying about not being able to avoid the barrel.
Mm-hmm.
If you're jumping and parrying around, that gives you the mobility to still hard,
so
but you can still dodge the barrel.
It might be a high player skill. I just don't know at what point you decide now is when I have to jump so I can parry the laser.
Yeah,
because if you're ducking under the laser, you can't jump and then parry it.
Yeah.
Unless you had the one ability that there's a passive ability. This one right here. Your first parry is automatic. All you need to do is jump. That would be the only way to pull it off, because you physically couldn't jump and parry at the same time to pull it off.
And you would also have had to not have used that ability yet in that stage.
No, it's the first jump every first jump.
Oh, really? Wow!
Yeah.
Wow!
It's pretty good. It actually comes in handy. Maybe this stage or the next stage. No, the smoke bomb's the way to go for this stage. The next stage, though, the automatic parry is very useful. So,
right.
Anyway, I mean, like, I realized we just sat here talking for a little bit, but I think that was an important discussion.
No, I agree. I think it was a distinctive design choice on their end to kind of go down that route. So it's interesting to see what their justifications might have been for going down this design path.
I don't know what's better. We're just going to go with this. Okay. Well, in the next stage, or next episode, we will go through the mountain pass, and if we're lucky enough, we'll also somehow complete the docks. I doubt it. The docks are very difficult.
Oh, yeah.
Hard time with the docks.
Cool.
The docks. The DAX.
Question of the day. I mean, I feel like we should talk about that ship battle with the laser. I don't know a good question to formulate out of that.
Oh. What do you feel about, and I quote, unavoidable attacks the first time they come into question? It is unavoidable unless you know it's coming, and the only way for you to know it's coming is to have already been punished by it.
I have a distant voice in my head of the Game Grumps screaming, "Unavoidable Shenmue!" Anyway, thank you for watching, everyone. Stay tuned for the next episode, and we will see you there. Bye.